Under your leadership, will you put a stop to the use of FBI or Department of Justice resources to try and recruit informants and spies into Christian churches or any church or house of worship in this country on the basis of nothing more than faith?
Of course, Senator.
Let me just say this. To our knowledge, no one who was involved in the writing and execution of this memo has been disciplined or fired. Will you conduct an investigation, like you talked about, Ms. Bondi, that will get to the bottom of abuses like this? And to be clear, this is an outrageous abuse. It is an outrageous abuse. One of the worst abuses of Department of Justice and FBI authority in our history. Will you conduct an investigation to find out who signed off on this, who approved it, who advocated for it within the Department of Justice? Will you open the books on these abuses so that the American people can have confidence in their DOJ?
Senator, and I think what you're talking about is the ultimate weaponization, what we've been discussing all day. If I'm confirmed as Attorney General, one of the first things I will do, there'll be many, but I will personally read that memo, and if Mr. Patel is confirmed, discuss it with him right away.
Fantastic. And will you
Hello, Patriots. Welcome back to Conservative Mandate, the channel where we fight for truth, justice, and the American way. Today, we're breaking down an explosive Senate confirmation hearing that reveals just how deep the corruption runs in Washington. The Department of Justice, under the Biden administration, has been transformed into a weapon against the very values that made this country great: freedom, faith, and family. But there's hope, and we're going to show you what's at stake and how you can help defend America's core principles. Before we dive into the shocking details, do your part to fight for freedom by smashing that subscribe button, giving this video a thumbs up, and dropping a comment below. Let us know what you think about this blatant attack on religious freedom and pro-life Americans. Watch until the very end, because I'm sharing critical steps we can take to stop this madness and hold the line for our great nation. Now, let's get right into it. At this hearing, Miss Bondi, an incredible nominee for Attorney General, was grilled on the weaponization of the Department of Justice. But here's the kicker, Patriots. The weaponization isn't some future possibility. It's already happening. Churches, pregnancy care centers, and people of faith have been under attack like never before in American history. And the numbers don't lie. Over 300 churches and more than 100 pregnancy care centers were vandalized, firebombed, and terrorized following the Dobbs Supreme Court decision. And how many prosecutions did Merrick Garland's so-called Justice Department bring for these crimes? 2. Just 2. Meanwhile, they sent armed SWAT teams to the homes of pro-life demonstrators like Mark Houck, a father of 7, who was later acquitted because the case was a sham from the start. This isn't just incompetence. This is deliberate persecution of pro-life Americans and people of faith. The Biden administration is using the Department of Justice to silence and intimidate anyone who stands against their radical, anti-life agenda. This is nothing less than an assault on our First Amendment rights, and it must stop.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Ms. Bondi, welcome. Congratulations on your nomination. I'm so glad that you've been nominated, as we discussed when we had the chance to meet.
Thank you.
It was a pleasure to work with you as a state attorney general for a number of years, and I'm delighted to see you here today before the committee. I look forward to your confirmation. You will be confirmed. I, too, have taken note of the number of times you have been asked about weaponization of the Department of Justice as if it was a theoretical possibility that might happen in the future. One of my colleagues on the other side said, weaponization may well occur under your tenure. We all know that weaponization has occurred like we've never seen before in American history under this administration. And I want to get even more specific. In the last 4 years, this administration has carried out an unprecedented attack and campaign against people of faith. If you look at the numbers, we've never seen anything like it before in American history. It has been one of the most disgraceful chapters in the history of the Justice Department and in the history of the FBI. And I hope that you will reverse this and do right by every American citizen, including especially people of faith. Let me give you some specifics. After the Dobbs case was decided by the Supreme Court, over 100 pregnancy care centers and over 300 churches in this country were attacked, vandalized, firebombed. Do you happen to know off the top of your head how many prosecutions Merrick Garland's Justice Department brought in those cases?
I do not, Senator.
It's a stunning number. It's 2. Hundreds of churches, hundreds of pregnancy care centers. And I might just add, these pregnancy care centers, the attacks on them, which were violent, which were gruesome, were egged on and encouraged by rhetoric from members of Congress, including members of this body, who have said that pregnancy care centers aren't real medicine, that they're not real doctors. They have legitimized these attacks. And the same thing was true of churches. And this Justice Department couldn't lift a finger to defend these Americans. But at the same time, they used legislation, a law known as the FACE Act, to prosecute at least 53 different pro-life demonstrators, including people like Mark Houck from Pennsylvania, to whom this Justice Department sent a SWAT team to his door in the early morning hours. He has, I think, 7 children. In the early morning hours, an FBI SWAT team shows up at his door to take him into custody and prosecute him. By the way, he was acquitted. This kind of outrageous, disparate treatment has to end. So here's my question to you. Will you protect churches and pregnancy care centers when they are targeted for violence, when they are targeted for intimidation, when their members or parishioners are threatened with violence or other acts of illegal behavior?
Yes, Senator.
Will you stop the disparate treatment of Americans on the basis of religious faith?
Yes, Senator.
Will you stop the deliberate persecution of pro-life Americans for nothing more than their pro-life beliefs?
Yes, Senator.
Will you ensure that nothing like the Mark Houck case happens again, that Americans do not have SWAT teams arriving on their front doors with armed weapons to terrorize their children and their spouses, only in the end, of course, to have the case lost because there was nothing to it? Will you put an end to that kind of deliberate intimidation of the good American citizens on the basis of their religious beliefs?
Yes, Senator.
I'm glad to hear you say that because we need it. We need it. Ms. Bondi, we need a new chapter at the Justice Department, and we need it quickly. And I'm glad you're committed to it. Now, I also have heard you've been asked about your comment that you thought that in some cases we need to investigate the investigators, the ones who were bad. You know, I have to say I'm glad to hear you stand by that. We need to do that. You need to do that. And I'll give you another example. I'm sure you've read about this memo, which I now hold in my hands. This memo that was developed by the FBI field office in Richmond, Virginia, 23rd January 2023, targeting Catholic parishes for spying, for recruitment of infiltrators. I mean, the memo goes on and on and on about the FBI's plans to put assets into Catholic parishes, into choirs. This is an unbelievable assault on Americans' First Amendment rights, and we only know of it because of a brave whistleblower who came forward and released it to us. And I will tell you, I have never been misled and lied to like I was by the current Attorney General and the now former FBI Director when they sat right where you're sitting now and told this committee, oh, we don't know anything about it. Oh, only one field office was involved. It was the single work of a single field office and a very few individuals. As it turns out, that's not true. Multiple field offices were involved. Multiple individuals were involved. Under your leadership, will you put a stop to the use of FBI or Department of Justice resources to try and recruit informants and spies into Christian churches or any church or house of worship in this country on the basis of nothing more than faith?
Of course, Senator.
Let me just say this. To our knowledge, no one who was involved in the writing and performance, execution of this memo has been disciplined or fired. Will you conduct an investigation like you talked about, Ms. Bondi, that will get to the bottom of abuses like this? And to be clear, this is an outrageous abuse. It is an outrageous abuse. One of the worst abuses of Department of Justice and FBI authority in our history. Will you conduct an investigation to find out who signed off on this, who approved it, who advocated for it within the Department of Justice? Will you open the books on these abuses so that the American people can have confidence in their DOJ?
Senator, and I think what you're talking about is the ultimate weaponization, what we've been discussing all day. If I'm confirmed as Attorney General, one of the first things I will do, there'll be many, but I will personally read that memo, and if Mr. Patel is confirmed, discuss it with him right away.
Fantastic. And will you work with this committee and our relevant subcommittees? I'm going to chair a subcommittee called the Crime and Terrorism Committee. We're going to do our own investigation into what happened here at the FBI and the DOJ. Will you work with us as you discover the nature of these abuses, and as you put a stop to them, will you work with us to make sure the American people get all the facts and this never happens again?
And Senator, yes, I look forward to working with you and the Democrats. I would think this is something that we can all agree on both sides, that this should not be happening in the United States of America, and work together on it.
That's fantastic. Let me ask you one other question here in my just few seconds that are remaining. This memo targeting Catholic parishes repeatedly refers to as an expert source a group called the Southern Poverty Law Center. Now, the Southern Poverty Law Center has a long history as an anti-religious group that has repeatedly gone after conservative and religious organizations, called them hate groups, called them sometimes terrorist groups. They're cited in this memo. They once infamously, the SPLC called the Family Research Council a terrorist hate group, and an armed gunman came into their lobby and opened fire. Will you put a stop to the use of the SPLC as an official source for any Department of Justice memorandum or finding?
That will be one of the first things we will look at as well, Senator, and report back to you and the committee.
Thank you very much. Congratulations. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Stop. But it gets worse. Patriots. We're now learning about an FBI memo from January 2023 that targeted Catholic parishes for surveillance. That's right. Our own government wanted to spy on churches, recruit informants from choirs, and monitor Americans based on nothing more than their faith. This is a direct attack on religious freedom, one of the fundamental pillars of our Constitution. And do you know where this memo got its so-called expert advice? The Southern Poverty Law Center, a radical, anti-religious organization that has labeled Christian groups as hate groups. The SPLC's lies once even inspired a gunman to open fire at the Family Research Council. Enough is enough. Miss Bondi has promised to investigate these abuses, hold those responsible accountable, and stop the weaponization of the DOJ. She's pledged to defend churches, pregnancy care centers, and pro-life Americans from this outrageous persecution. She's also committed to working with Senate subcommittees to uncover the full truth and ensure this never happens again. But Patriots, we can't just sit back and hope for change. The left is relentless in its quest to destroy everything we hold dear. That's why we need to stand together and fight back. Share this video with every freedom-loving American you know. Spread the truth about what's happening in Washington. And if you haven't yet, subscribe to Conservative Mandate to stay informed and join the movement to defend our great nation. The fight for America's soul is happening right now, and you're on the front lines. Together, we can stop the woke mob, expose the lies, and restore justice to our nation. Stay strong, Patriots. Stay vigilant. And as always, God bless you, and God bless the United States of America.